welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Dr. Julie-Rosenberg, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Beyond the Mat: Achieve Focus, Presence, and Enlighten Leadership Through the Principles and Practice of Yoga. Now, Dr. Julie-Rosenberg is a pharmaceutical executive and a global healthcare leader. She's also an executive coach who helps successful leaders get even better by developing themselves, their people, and by embracing more conscious living. Dr. Rosenberg has developed the last 16 years to the in-depth study and practice of yoga and meditation. Her work demonstrates that the discipline of yoga not only supports good health and well-being, but also helps to strengthen one's personal and professional leadership skills. So let's welcome to the show, Dr. Julie-Rosenberg.
Thanks, Marianne. Pleasure to be here. What a joy it is to have you here, and I just love your book. I can understand why people are calling it, just amazing, enlightening. You've got all these great accolades in regards to what people are thinking about your book because it's making such a big impact. Yes, and I really appreciate that, Marianne. I mean, I really am, as a physician and as a healthcare leader, I really am delighted to serve the public and offer people ways that they can actually own their health and implement different types of health-related practices, many of which in the book, of course, are related to the practice of yoga, to improve their health and really to live and lead well. That's my ultimate goal, is really to help along those lines everyone, as many people as I can possibly reach. Oh, of course. And, you come from actually a very unique background, and it offers a very, again, unique perspective that most people wouldn't have. So I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about the work you currently do and kind of what started you on this path. Well, the work I currently do, Marianne, is in international drug development, and my focus in this paradigm of drug development is that I oversee programs, and all of the programs that I work on are in service to patients with cancer. So basically, I and the teams that I work with are developing either new drugs or biosimilar drugs that are ultimately, after their path is completed, available to individuals with cancer. And my goal, over the 25 years that I've been in the field of oncology is to support the improvements in treatment for cancer and to serve those populations. So to go back just a bit, since you had asked about my history, I'm actually trained and certified as a pediatric oncologist, and I worked in academic medicine for about 8.5 years prior to my transition into the pharmaceutical industry, where I've been doing drug development. And part of the reason for my transition, because I really love serving patients and working in a university and academic setting, but I wanted to work more globally. And what the pharmaceutical industry has offered me is that opportunity. So now I work very closely, especially in the Asian region, but also with Europe and South America. And again, we're developing drugs that serve individuals throughout the world. And the reason I got into this yoga situation, if you will, and why I ultimately wrote my book, Beyond the Mat, is because I feel like I've seen so much over the years. And our goal, of course, in treatment of patients with cancer is not just to cure disease, but to help people be well. And so overall, there are so many chronic diseases, and the stress of our lives is really killing people, to be quite blunt, that I've found ways over time through my own exercise practice, nutritional focus, and yoga practice especially, to be able to help myself and others manage uncertainty, manage stress, manage the craziness of our 24/7 society. And so ultimately, after speaking to large groups, I decided after a bit of prodding that I should put down what I've shared with so many audiences over the years into a book, and that's what one finds in Beyond the Mat. So really it's my effort to help people, initially the cancer population of survivors, which fortunately has become so great as time has gone on, but more importantly now, really everyone. So I think the work is available to everyone because ultimately we as physicians should not just be treating disease, we should help our patients stay well and learn how to do that. It's not necessarily intuitive.
Well, thank you so much for the work you're doing on the cancer front. My goodness, we need so much more people and resources where that's concerned. And I love how your book really integrates some of the kind of addresses some of the issues that people who are maybe going through cancer, or just as you're saying, people who are stressed out, that don't want to get in a place of ill health, can look at and go, gosh, I'm going to take some preventative actions towards my health.
Mm-hmm. And that's really the goal. I mean, for me, it's about health ownership. There are many problems, of course, as we all know, with society as relates to health care. And there are many things going on, of course, at governmental levels and other levels to try to better support individuals to maintain their good health. However, I think that we have a responsibility as citizens and as people to ourselves and our loved ones to take ownership of our health, because I think that we have the power to help ameliorate some of the disease that we see by healthy lifestyle habits and by just perhaps focusing differently as we think about our health. Because as you know, Marianne, just to give an example, there's still about 38 million Americans who smoke cigarettes. And we know the cause, one of the many causes of lung cancer is really still known to be cigarette smoking, although there are other causes as well. And not only does cigarette smoking lead in some cases to lung cancer, of course it leads to chronic lung disease, and then there are the passive effects of cigarette smoking on those around the individual who smokes. So I think, again, this has been discussed broadly in the media and beyond, and people are aware of this. But, what I'm trying to do is take that awareness and evolve it for those who may be affected, using that example, to more healthy habits and desire for more healthy habits. And, I have to say, I got into some of this because there was a lot of stress in my job. In my life, in my job, I was dealing with family circumstances, and I was dealing with, a very busy career and just a multitude of other things. And the question for me became, how do I stay balanced? And once I learned to really achieve what I call now, and others as well call it, a work-life integration, because I think it's so hard to achieve balance. I think if we don't fight trying to get that balance, we're probably better off. But in this work-life integration type of a focus, how can I stay well? How can I be as balanced as possible? How can I feel good? And how can I meet the demands of my day and my life with relative ease? And, of course, nothing's perfect. I don't do this perfectly by any means, but I do think I have a rhythm down that has been not only helpful for me, but as you mentioned, Marianne, it's been helpful for others. And I think that's what I try to propose in Beyond the Mat, that you really can take ownership, and in so doing, it doesn't have to cost you money, and it doesn't have to take an inordinate amount of time. And I think those two things are important too.
Well, and I love how you approach yoga, beyond the mat, because a lot of times when people think of yoga and the practices of yoga, they do think of the actual exercises and the poses. What does it mean to go beyond the mat?
Well, I think our Western view of yoga, Marianne, so much is still that it's a discipline composed typically of a series of poses, and it's an effort to really get fit and flexible. And, I agree. It is in part that, but it is so much more than that. It really is a roadmap to optimal living and leading. And what my book does is really parallel the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and in doing this, it gives people a structure, because I think that people respond so much better to structure. And it doesn't mean that people have to do any kind of yoga. They don't have to change their lifestyle. But I like people to think about the structure of the Yoga Sutras, because they're really important for our health, in my mind. So just to give an example, the first part of the Yoga Sutras are called the Yama, and these are universal moral commandments. They're guidelines how we can show up for our lives. And basically these guidelines, and we've heard them before, but what if we really integrated them and lived by them? So, for example, they include a guideline on not committing violence, a guideline on telling the truth, not stealing from others, practicing self-restraint, taking only what is absolutely necessary. Well, what if we utilized that framework and applied it to our lives and kept it in mind? And that's just the first of the Yoga Sutras, the Yama. What if we kept that in mind as we move through our day and our life, just top of mind, and practice those things? And so, Marianne, this is how my book is basically orchestrated. Not only does it address the asana or the postures that we know so well in Western society, it actually goes through the Yoga Sutras, making them relevant and applicable today, even more perhaps than they were in ancient times when they were written. So that's my goal, and I think if you study and adopt the philosophical underpinnings, not just what one does on the mat, that you really have an opportunity to have an ongoing framework for your life in which you can manage better at home and at work. And that's really what it's all about. How can we manage our lives better to improve our health, wellness, our focus, and also in so doing improve our relationships and overall our personal and professional success?
Oh, isn't that what we all want, is to have some kind of peace in our life and to have that success? And I know in your book you also talk about, you have tips for laying the foundation of success in our practice and how important that is. And I know you've kind of touched on a few things, but I'd love for you to kind of expand on that a little bit for our listeners.
Well, one of the goals, when I talk about success, I also equate success with leadership, Marianne. And leadership just isn't about folks who are in the C-suite or high-level organizational employees or entrepreneurs. It's really applicable to all of us. And I talk about enlightened leadership, and this doesn't have to be an esoteric term, but I believe that being an enlightened leader of ourselves and others helps us not only improve our own lives, but also being committed to the universal world, to the universe itself, and making the world a better place. And also in so doing, we can experience our own personal growth and our own opportunity for transformation. So I define enlightened leaders in my book in 10 different ways. And I think these skills are critically important. They include compassion, confidence, courage, humility, being intentional, being open-minded, passionate, purposeful, self-aware, self-caring, spiritual, and visionary. And I know I went through those quickly, but they are well described in the book, Marianne. And I think, it's not just how we get business results per se. It's how we lead ourselves and our teams to get those results in the world of business that I believe really equals sustainable success. So by fostering these types of skill sets, it really helps us be more grounded, more available to ourselves and to others, and more present to do the work that hopefully we love to do, but also that to live the life that we want to live. So I think we all should, attempt to be enlightened leaders. And of interest, Marianne, with the recent passing of Senator John McCain, I believe that McCain really had a lot of those attributes, and just wrote a recent article which I actually put on social media forums regarding how we can be everyday heroes, because you don't have to be a war hero or a prisoner of war or a very well-known senator such as McCain. I think that we can be heroes in our everyday lives. And so I think what I'm trying to do is drill it down to the individual, because the individual has so much impact on society.
Oh, without a doubt. And I agree with you about Senator McCain. I mean, I was heartbroken to hear that he had passed and what a legacy he leaves behind. But also he raises the bar on how we should be not only towards each other, but how we should strive to be better in life. And what a great American hero. Well, and you touched on a part that really, I think a lot of people are always going, gosh, how do I obtain this? You have some people saying it's a myth, but when we talk about work-life balance, it seems almost as elusive as a unicorn, for some people. They're like, I don't think it's possible to get this. And I'd love for you to expand on that for us, because I think it's all, I think your book explained it very well, and I'd love for you to share that with us.
Well, I think, Marianne, that ideally we should all do work that we love. And I have to say that, I'm very interested in these parameters around what we've talked about as success. And I look for people in the work world that I find successful. And so those people who are successful do not necessarily have high-level roles. And let me tell you just a small example so I can elucidate what I mean here. I go to a little cafe often for breakfast, and the woman that busses the tables, her name is Yesenia. She's always happy, engaged, greets the customer. She has a smile on her face. She moves through the room with grace and relative ease, and she's somebody that I've always wanted to know. She's extremely happy in her role, working to support the clients and to support the other servers, and she doesn't have aspiration to do really anything different. And so she embodies someone who loves her job. And so it doesn't matter what you do. This is a very important job to that company, in terms of ensuring that the clients get what they need in the restaurant. And she takes that role seriously and does it well. And we can all do that. So taking that out to the balance part, love the work you do. And then secondly, no matter how busy your job is, I think it's very important to put some boundary around it. But of course, Marianne, we work in a 24/7 world now, so many of us. And it's not just doctors and lawyers and others of this ilk who are expected to be available. It's everyone. And we've got social media running around all the time, and we've got news 24/7, and we've got, responsibilities at home and beyond. And so what I try to have people do is what I'm calling work-life integration, and that's not a term unique to me, but for example, you need to start your day on the right foot, and so when you get up, rather than reaching for your phone, there might be a few things that you can do. And just give an example of my own life. If you start the day with a brief meditation or focus on breath, and I say, people, your listeners would probably say, I don't have time for that. It can be 3 minutes, just a few minutes of getting up intentionally instead of grabbing your phone and seeing how many, social media pings you have or how many text messages you have. Start it intentionally. Set an intention for your day. Think about each day how you want to start it. I typically start my day in the gym. That may not be for everyone. Some people take a walk. Some people have to get to work. But even if you have to get to work right that moment when you get up, you still can take a few moments for yourself to breathe deeply, consider a short meditation. If you don't have time for 10 or 20 minutes, a few minutes will do. Eat something that is healthy and nutritious, so you start your day right. And all these things I'm describing don't take, a very long period of time. And once you're level-footed on starting the day right, whatever you may choose to do, and, we could talk about that in and of itself for an hour, really think about your day. Perhaps write down a few things that you want to do so you can ensure some level of accomplishment. And then, as you go through the day, put some boundaries around things that may be major distractions and major causes of stress, especially our cell phones and our computers. And be sure to take a break throughout the day if you're working, and be sure to integrate throughout the day, or at least throughout the week, some things that will be grounding and pleasurable for yourself. So for me, for example, I travel quite a bit. I enjoy getting a therapeutic massage a couple times a month, and so I put that in my schedule, and it's something to look forward to. Other people may enjoy, of course, other things, and that's great, but follow those hobbies and try to put boundaries around the things that cause you distraction and stress, and also even the people that may cause inordinate distraction and stress. Because at the end of the day, it's all up to the individual. How you want to live your life in most cases is really your own choice, whatever your challenges may be. So living intentionally, I think, is really a way to overcome some of these vicissitudes of our current society.
Without a doubt. I mean, and being so mindful in the moment, I love that, because it really helps us to kind of wash away everything else and just focus on what's in front of us, or with the tasks we're doing. And, there's a few things that you have in your book. One, you talk about why compassion matters. And I think that, especially in this day and time, I think it's so important for people, they may be hearing it, but maybe they need to hear it again. So I'd love for you to kind of just share a little bit about that. It's like, why does compassion matter during our practice?
Well, I think it really matters, in the scope of our lives, Marianne. We really want to be attuned to other individuals and mindful of their circumstance and less judgmental. And it really leads more to a culture at home and in business of empathy and clarity and understanding. And, if you lead and live compassionately, I think you're more open to some of the challenges that may be that you may be up against, but also that others may be up against. And compassion for others really comes back to you, because it minimizes stress and it minimizes, toxicity in relationships, being open and more empathetic, more compassionate to those in our networks. And so, I just strongly advise folks to think about this as they move through the day. So many people have discussed in the literature and beyond that people leave organizations because they have bad bosses. And when I've looked at that literature, and, of course, I too have had a bad boss, I think in part these bad bosses often, and I'm not going to generalize, but often they don't have compassion. And it is that lack of compassion and disregard for people that often could equal the bad boss. And, of course, there are other things as well. But I use this as an example that just that one element, compassion, can really change a dynamic and help us in relationships and in our lives so much that it's worthy of implementing and certainly worthy of considering. And I do have it as one of the parameters of what I call an enlightened leader.
Well, on that note, we are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Julie Rosenberg on her new book, Beyond the Mat. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. teaching beyond conventional wisdom. Her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Dr. Julie Rosenberg, and she's here sharing with us her new book, Beyond the Mat. So, Dr. Rosenberg, in your book, you talk about breathing techniques. And I'd love for you to share with us how important those are, not just on the yoga mat, but all throughout our day.
So I think breathing techniques, and I should take just a quick pause here and mention that pranayama is breathing or rhythmic control of the breath. And that's one of the yoga sutras that I do go into some detail in my book, Marianne. And I think breathing is really critical. And let me just say why. When we are in situations that are stressful, we have a tendency to react. And what we want to do in those stressful situations is pause. Because when we pause, we really have an opportunity to gather our thoughts and, again, to be more in the present moment. So instead of reacting and perhaps saying or doing something that we will be upset with later, we have a chance to pause. And that quick pause gives us an opportunity to reflect and perhaps act differently in the moment. So I have to say the breathing part of this for me personally as a corporate leader working with a lot of different people and coming across many different situations where I could react. And I could say before I did this, I have reacted. You know, those reactions can get us in trouble. Right? So what I try to do now, and nobody has to notice, is maybe take a deep breath from the belly up into the chest, let it out, and try to ground myself, my feet, on the ground or sitting in a chair. You know, I try to be grounded in that chair. I try to feel the earth beneath my body and take a big breath, and that allows me to pause and ideally may change the way that I react to a situation. So I think this breathing throughout the day, this control of the breath and mindfulness around the breath allows us to be present in each and every circumstance, and the pause really helps us be less reactive and have better judgment in different situations. So that breath work, I think, is really critical. And, you know, if folks are interested, again, I do have a few things on breathing on social media, but it is well covered in the book, and I think this is so critical, this idea of the breath and the pause in difficult situations.
Well, it's so encouraging to hear that you've even encountered challenges when it comes to, breath work or reacting, because I think a lot of people, when they look at your website, you look so peaceful. It looks like you were born into Zen, and so when we look at that, and for people who sometimes struggle with like mindfulness and their meditation practice, and then when we get into the breathing practice as well, it's kind of encouraging to hear that, their mentors or the people that they aspire to, that emanate that peaceful kind of flow. There's a beginning for everybody.
Right. There's a beginning for everyone, Marianne, and importantly too, it's not perfect. My life is not perfect, but by any means. But I try to make it as good as it can be, and I try to utilize these things to help me move through the world in a way that I experience a certain level of peace, joy, and satisfaction. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, this is success. And also on a personal level, Marianne, my son, Ryan, is autistic, and I've really needed to use these. Some of your listeners may also have experienced autism in the family or even personally. I've tried to use these things to be more and more patient with him, because also I see a very strong responsibility that I have as a mother to not react to a son, who has had some challenges in different areas. And how can I be more peaceful to allow him to be more peaceful? Or, back on the business note, how can I be more peaceful and reflective so I can share those traits with my teams and have my teams be more peaceful, reflective, and ultimately make better decisions and get better business results. So these are some of the drivers for me, Marianne, but we all slip into, other ways, and myself included, of course.
Well, and a lot of times, because your book, I'm actually at this one section I just love right now. It talks about, try this in 2 minutes, and it gives you, just kind of a breathing practice for people who just need 2 minutes to kind of regroup and get back on track there. When you talk about mindfulness at work, how does that all work into a business model, making it more effective?
Well, I think that some business models, more and more we're getting away from this, but some business models are built on a fairly hierarchical structure. I actually myself, work in such an environment professionally, and I'm okay with it, although more and more less organized leadership in terms of a hierarchical structure per se, not less organized overall, but in terms of the hierarchy has become popular. And it's very important to prioritize people, right? There are so many organizations in the past, even now, that haven't necessarily prioritized people, but people are now recognizing more and more that in systems that are truly effective, the people are the bottom line. So people are not commodities. People are people, and that building a company and getting business success is actually based on the people. If the people are happy, if the people are engaged, and if the people are well, back to the health model, then I think the opportunity to get good business results is actually greater. So we want to have these types of values and people-related values, and this is what we can learn from the yoga practice, the many things I stated that equal enlightened leadership. These are also principles of success. And, I have to say, I personally work in a hardcore organization, right? I work in an organization that is on very strict timelines that would be necessary in the pharmaceutical industry, we're up against the clock. We want to serve patients. We want to serve individuals, in my case, with cancer, and we want to develop these drugs as quickly, as effectively as possible. And there are many challenges in doing that, but we have to put the people first. So in my work, I put the team first, and the team cohesively can help to get those business results. And some of my, personal goals are always to have what I call an A team. And you can build an A team by doing the various things that we've been thinking about today, because it's beyond just the scope of the business. It's the desire of the team to be cohesive, to support each other, to support, in my case, again, the patients, and to do that with presence, with focus, with excitement, and with joy.
I love that. I'm sure people are going, gosh, I wish my leader was like that. Maybe more leaders like that. Well, and so on this topic, I know you've mentioned some of them, but what are the 8 limbs of yoga, and how is having an understanding of them really important for leaders today?
Well, again, Marianne, the 8 limbs of yoga, I can go through them quickly. We talked about the yamas, which are universal moral commandments. The second limb of yoga is the niyamas, which are practices that are related more to self-discipline. And, of course, self-discipline is important for leaders. Those the 5 things composing the niyamas are cleanliness, contentment, self-restraint, self-study, and devotion. So that equals the self-discipline part or self-purification part of yoga. The asana practice, we all know, that's the typical practice of on the mat. It's the yoga postures, and they do help us with fitness and flexibility. And I should say, as a quick aside, I do a lot of traveling, as I've mentioned, and I've even got it down to a science where I do, some of these yoga postures in my seat on the airplane, and I can say I don't look too crazy, and a lot of times the people around me want to do it too. So this is the asana practice. The 4th limb we've hit on, that's pranayama, or rhythmic control of the breath. The 5th limb is called pratyahara, and by the way, these are all Sanskrit terms, and again, you don't have to know them. I'm just trying to offer a structure, but what this does is it helps us, pratyahara, to withdraw and free our mind of the senses and all of the exterior things that distract us, and so that's very important, of course. The 6th limb is called dharana, that is concentration. We need to focus, and that this really helps us concentrate better. Dhyana, the 7th limb, is meditation, and of course a meditation practice is actually part of the entire yoga practice. And lastly, samadhi is the highest stage in meditation. This is when one, in theory, can experience bliss or oneness with the universe. And this is kind of a goal that may sound very lofty, to your listeners, but at the end of the day, in my mind, this is being in the flow, or experience joy, or experience, profound peace and contentment, just satisfaction with life. And so I do believe that these 8 limbs of yoga, they provide a structure for leading and living. And so while it's not critically important for me as a healthcare provider or as the person who wrote this book that everyone picks it up and goes and does yoga in a studio on a mat and buys fancy clothes and nice equipment and this and that, although honestly, I think it's great. But it's more important for me that people think about the things in this book and begin to implement them in their lives and ideally track their progress. The other thing I want to say is that so many people are out there, selling so many things, and many of them are definitely value added. I'm a consumer, of course, I buy things too. But in this model, there is nothing here that costs money, with the exception of if you want some yoga gear, yoga clothes, or whatever like this, of course. There are things that we need to do for ourselves, and there are ways in which we can own our lives So we need to have a personal ownership, Marianne, of our lives and how we live and lead them. And I believe that the Yoga Sutras actually provide a structure to allow folks to do that. And that's, again, why I've utilized them as a framework for writing my book, Beyond the Mat.
Yeah, I mean, your book is such a great resource. I found it to be such a fabulous I can turn to any page and just get knowledge, although it's a fabulous read all the way through, and so it's perfect for somebody who's looking to take their practice to the next level. And I think that's, when we hit the mat, a lot of times we're looking like, how can we expand beyond what we're doing right now? And a lot of times we don't even think about the principles behind yoga is where the expansion can take place.
Right, and the principles actually, they're not only behind yoga, but as we've just talked about, yoga really do help one the foundation for optimal living and leading. And that's why I like that structure so much, because, I can go back to any of these yoga sutras, any of them, and find something, new or interesting as I review them, or any literature tangential to them. And Marianne, I do appreciate you making an acknowledgement of that, because I do recognize everyone's busy. We're all busy. We're all too busy. And so how do we manage our busyness? So what I'm trying to say as well is, for people who think they have no time, okay, I'll go with that. You try this in 2 minutes and see if it helps you to make a change. 2 minutes. We've all got 2 minutes, I think, no matter how busy we are.
We can't afford not to take that time for ourselves, because it's been shown, and we're kind of coming full circle in our discussion in some ways, when we initially were talking about stress and how it's affecting people's health. We can't afford not to do this.
Right, that's what I think. Again, I think that no matter who we are or what our circumstance, we need to do our best and for how we live and lead our lives.
Yeah. Well, Julie, my goodness, we can sit here and talk for hours. I mean, your book is such a great inspiration. Where can people connect with you and be part of your community?
My website, Marianne, is julie-rosenberg.md.com. It's on social media. I try to put a lot of quality things and articles on social media, and I do have a blog on my website. So I'd love to hear from your listeners. I also have a newsletter that goes out, and again, I try to provide things for the community that are inspirational but also practical and can be utilized in everyday life.
Well, I'm part of your community. I highly suggest everyone do the same, to hop over to your website, join your social media, and also your newsletter, and, of course, pick up the book Beyond the Mat. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you, Marianne. It's a pleasure, and it's been a delight to be with you and to share some thoughts with your listeners.
Well, thank you, Dr. Julie. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Beyond the Mat. If you'd like to connect with Dr. Julie Rosenberg, you can at her website, julie-rosenberg.md.com, learn more about her book, Beyond the Mat, and, of course, be part of her community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.